Hey everybody, what's happening? Neil back once again with another streaming review for you. And today I'm going to be taking a look back at Ozark Season 4, Part 1. Yes, so it's a hindsight review once again, and I'm going to spoil the shit out of this awesome TV show. It's so intense, so dramatic. I haven't seen such great acting like this since maybe Breaking Bad and, Dexter and shows with such intensity where you can just tell these characters are losing their minds inside, but they're trying to stay calm. At least the central characters do anyway. Some of the other characters, of course, are crazy and violent and just insane psycho. There's just so many wonderful, wonderfully crazy characters in this show. Now, again, spoilers. So, I'm not going to recap season 1 to season 3, but they do actually recap season 3 as soon as you start season 4, part 1. So yeah, this final season on Netflix, if you haven't seen the show, obviously, what's the point of listening to this review? Go watch the show, come back, and then after you've watched it, and then you can read this review and hear my opinion if you care. But anyway, yeah, season 3, it was mainly about how, Marty and Wendy were getting deeper and deeper involved with the Navarro cartel, and especially Navarro himself. And they had this lawyer for the cartel named Helen, and she got killed at the very end of season 3 because Navarro didn't really want her around anymore, and she was kind of getting a little too demanding, and kind of, he didn't like that, so he had her offed just like that. And there's, blood and guts all over Marty and Wendy, and they have to clean up right away in the first episode of season 4. Yeesh. Yeah. And another thing about season 3 would, obviously got to talk about Ben too, which is Wendy's brother, whom she basically let cartel agent kill him. She also, he kind of put himself in that position. He was killed because he had a big mouth and he was blabbing on about the cartel and how the birds were working for them, and do you know what they're doing? They're laundering money. Oh my god! And it's just, so he had to go, clearly, one way or another. He seemed really like a good, honest, character that you might even root for, but no, he's gone. So that brings us up to date here, basically, with season 4. And so, once Marty and Wendy, they're down in Mexico after Helen is executed, and they get all cleaned up, and they wind up meeting Navarro's nephew, Javier, or Javi for short. And his nephew is, how shall I say, rash, impulsive, extremely violent, and I would say feeling rather invincible, to be a powerful member of this cartel. And I guess anyone would feel that powerful if you're, that well protected and armed and whatnot. But he goes off the rails, and right away, pretty much right after introducing himself, he actually winds up going to the Ozarks back with Marty and Wendy, and then he kills the sheriff because they tell him, no, Sheriff Nix is going to be could be a problem. It's just like, well, I'll take care of that problem. Blam, and he's dead, just like so impulsively. Javi's shoot first and ask questions later kind of guy. And his deal is that he's trying to find the mole, that there's a rat, within the cartel, and he doesn't realize that it's actually Navarro himself. He's trying to make a deal with the FBI, which is constantly on their trail. And then you have this investigator that's looking into Helen's murder for her ex-husband, and there's a lot going on, here. I can't really talk about everything. I don't want this video to be too long, but I'm just going to touch on the main important things here. Wyatt, who's this character that's kind of really dumb, unfortunately. Poor guy. He's really a hopeless romantic who doesn't really care about the long-term plans or goals or going to college or anything like that. He just really wants to just be in love and just be happy now, because there's been so much negativity in his life. I guess I can't really blame him. But unfortunately, he winds up in the arms of Darlene, and Darlene is, oh my goodness, she is a train wreck of a psycho killer, just like Javier. Actually, a lot like Javi. She's got a lot in common with him. She's a bit of a psycho. She'll shoot people as soon as she feels insulted. She killed Del a few seasons ago, and Del's the guy that nearly killed Marty in the very first episode. He killed everybody else. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Darlene is nuts. She killed her own husband, and now she's going against the cartel's wishes, and she's producing heroin without permission. She winds up murdering the head of the Kansas City Mafia and his son, Frank Jr., who's already had his dick blown off by Darlene. Like, seriously. He wants revenge on Darlene, clearly. But Ruth, and this is maybe the best character in the whole show, Ruth convinces him not to take revenge on crazy Darlene. Unfortunately for Darlene and Wyatt, pretty much right after they get married, what happens is Javi kills them both. It's very sad, actually, even though I hated Darlene, but it's still very sad. Ruth winds up finding them dead and assumes that Frank Jr. did it, but also assumes that Marty and Wendy had something to do with it. So she's on the rampage. She's going nuts. Frank Jr. denies any involvement, and of course he's completely innocent. He did exactly what Ruth told him to, not to go after Darlene, even though Darlene, ruined his life. But still, he didn't do it, and obviously we know that. And Javier is, he's in a lot of trouble in part 2, let me tell you. And it's just amazing to see Julia Garner in action. She's the Emmy winner, right? She's got a couple of trophies now. She's such a standout on this show, and wow, just her intensity. You would never want to mess with her. That's all I'm saying. And same with, the actor who plays Darlene as well. She's such a hateful, bitter old Betty, and, she tricks the weak-minded into working for her to produce heroin and stuff. And like I said, she's got a list of, horrible things that she's done in the past. So, yeah. So, anyway, obviously I'm praising the acting and certainly, a few other things about it, but here's the thing. The only thing about this show is that the pacing is kind of a little too slow at times in between high-paced action sequences and intense drama. Pulled off by these brilliant actors. Jason Bateman, he deserves a trophy, a trinket, as well as Laura Linney. Everyone does, really, quite frankly. Everyone's so good. But in the sense of their acting is just fantastic. You can really tell that they're exploding inside, even though they're very calm. And so when something really bad happens, Marty's like, yeah, well, we'll have to deal with that, and he just he just goes on, and you can tell he's dying inside. But that's what's so brilliant about it. Now, in terms of things that aren't so great about the show, because I could gush all day about the acting and certain things, like other than the pacing, which is a little slow, as I said, but I didn't care so much for some of the shock. Deaths, they're not so shocking now. Ever since episode 1, that was a shocking sequence, and then there were some other ones like Dell's death and things like that were like, oh my god, but how many of those do we get, in season 4? And in part 1 we get quite a few of them, actually, and that's kind of a little too much like, I don't know, it's just too much like kind of Breaking Bad. It's almost predictable. It's like, okay, who's gonna die next, I wonder? And that's what makes you think about part 2. You think, well, yeah, who's gonna die next? And the other criticism I kind of have about this show is just a little bit how there's just not that many, good characters you want to root for, because as intelligent as Marty is and as impressive as he is as a man in this show, you just kind of think like, wow, he's also just like, he's a terrible guy for messing up in the first place, right? Messing with the cartel, with his buddy Bruce and all that, and all those other people that died for their crimes. Wendy, I think, though, I think that Wendy is much worse so far in part 1 in this season. Lying about Ben. She lied about Ben still being alive, and she's like running for office, and she's on her podium saying like, oh, he's out there somewhere and hopefully we'll find him one day. It's just like so much karma is going to hit her, and karma's going to hit a lot of characters here, especially Javi, I would say. Navarro strikes a deal with the FBI. He winds up getting arrested for his troubles. A lot goes on here in the final 7th episode of part 1. So we got another 7 episodes coming. So that's it. That's really all I can say about it. In terms of part 1 here, just this part of Ozark, it is a brilliant show with brilliant performances. And I just think the pacing is a little slower this season, and it is kind of getting a little tired of like, okay, who's going to die next? Who's going to die next? And yeah, like what's going to happen in part 2? more shocking deaths or some kind of Wild West shootout kind of situation. I don't know. Like it's how do they top what they've already done in terms of these like shocking character deaths. So yeah, but these are very minor misgivings about a very fine show, of course. And I'm gonna give season 4 part 1 an 8 out of 10. Very solid rating, even though I wasn't too surprised. It was fairly predictable, but the acting and the directing and certainly a lot of these ideas, they work really well. And again, if you love shows like Breaking Bad or even Better Call Saul or any shows like where people get into trouble and things get worse and worse and worse, even though they're trying to fix mistakes or they have good intentions, a lot of these characters, they are tough to root for. You kind of want to root for the kids maybe, and Ruth to a point too, but even though she's a murderer too. I mean, everyone's kind of despicable in this show, but I love it. I don't care. So still solid 8 out of 10. That's all for me, folks. This is Neil signing off, and hope you're all doing well out there. Peace.